And we're recording. This is the Kubernetes SIG-network meeting for Thursday, September 19th, 2019. Do we have someone for issue triage this week?
I can do that.
Are we doing issue triage? It's not on the...
I mean, that's a good question. We do now have very few things in the backlog to triage.
Is that not a result of us doing triage every 2 weeks?
True.
Yeah, it's not on the agenda. I think it's kind of a default part of the agenda now. I think maybe we can get through it in 15 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely not going to keep taking the full half hour. Right. Let me share that then. Okay. First up, we have replace kubelet node IP validation error with warning or allow skipping. So behavior feature request. It's like no one's looked at this yet. Anyone want to dig into this deeper?
It sounds like a validation that should be there.
I think it's a feature request.
Yeah.
Feature request. So if it's already assigned a kind, we just need to give it a priority and remove the triage.
Do a triage?
Okay.
Late to walk in.
Nah.
I did a little bit of triage this morning too, pinged a few bugs.
Did you close that? I left it as open as a feature request.
Do we want backlog or do we want important long term?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd say backlog.
All right. Moving along. Node port only responding when connecting locally from node, but not from other machines. Something tells me this is a configuration problem.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
There's some Calico mentioned in there, so.
Send them my way, I guess.
Sorry, who is that?
Casey Davenport.
All right. WebSocket connection failures. Looks like they have a lot of stuff going on here.
Yeah, I read through this morning. Their WebSockets are eventually failing, but it seems like they're not TCP resetting. So something in the middle is broken.
Are they using Python?
Wasn't clear.
There's another bug where someone's saying their Python WebSockets are dying or something.
It's a very specific question.
Is that volunteering to follow up?
I think so.
Ouch.
Someone knows all about
Way to taskmaster. Nice job. Dan will never speak up again.
All right. Next up. 1.16, kube controller manager panics when restarting after disabling alpha feature IPv6 dual stack. Uh-oh.
It's because of unexpected field populated getting.
Sounds like a real bug.
I think Cal's commented on this. We just need to shepherd it through and get it. It's.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's yeah, okay.
Can you scroll up? I already commented on this. He was using Cilium, if I remember correctly.
Sorry, the Zoom thing is blocking my screen. I don't see a comment from you on this issue.
Yeah, okay. So I talked with him on Slack.
Okay.
He's using Cilium and enabling dual stack on Cilium. All right, let me get back and I'll take care of it.
Okay. All right, next, have option to pass in cluster service for API server.
I think I commented on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I think I assigned it to myself if you maybe didn't reload in the last hours. Yep, there we go.
Yeah. Sounds like a enhancement request.
Yep, I'll follow up on it, figure out if it's legit or not.
Okay. Next is how to avoid duplicate entry in Nginx or ingress on multi-tenant environment.
I also
sounds like a help request.
No, I think they're really asking, how do I prevent two users from claiming the same host name on an Nginx ingress? And if they do, what's supposed to happen? So I think I also assigned this one to myself, didn't I?
Yeah,
you just commented.
They need a validation webhook.
Yeah, you can assign it to me.
Hey Tim, you could point them at Gatekeeper, which actually has this use case and policy.
Yeah, I was going to suggest Gatekeeper, the OPA, because there's kind of a family of configuration problems like this that they address.
Yeah, could someone CC me on this one? I'm interested in that too.
Also, Contour does this out of the box.
Does what?
Basically, if you submit overlapping names in your FQDNs, there's a resolution problem. It'll actually call it out, whereas Nginx has different results.
Okay.
And that's with ingress route, so not with
ingress route, not with standard. Okay.
Right.
This is something that where it kind of makes sense to leave it up to the controller, because if you're using like a cloud load balancer or something, it makes sense that you could be doing something weird with your DNS.
I think so. It's just non-deterministic behavior from Nginx ingress, so maybe Gatekeeper's a good.
Yeah.
It may be that the only answer here is just to define what should happen. All right.
Okay. Moving along, service endpoint status is wrong, not updated. So it looks like data is stale when they have nodes unavailable.
I have seen something similar. So there was a feature request basically asking for the service controller don't act like when all the nodes disconnect, because it's mostly likely due to like the network partition between the master and nodes, and then the endpoint controller sort of determine what endpoints should be behind a load balancer, and in that case, the load balancer should be kept intact. Yeah, you can assign that to me. This is Minhan, Freehan. Freehan.
Sorry, I got that backwards.
Yes.
Okay. Kubeproxy node port addresses do not work for health check node port. Guessing Andrew just needs to come back to this one. I think it's something we already looked at briefly.
Yeah, Andrew, are you here? Okay.
All right.
Give him another cycle.
Unable to perform initial IP allocation check, unable to refresh the service IP.
Really long report.
Yeah, Bowie, did you get to take a look at this one?
Bowie is out this week.
Okay.
Oh, I'm here, but
oh, you're here. What are you doing here? Are you at least on the beach?
No, I'm not live streaming like from the beach like somebody I saw yesterday, but
Clayton has.
I'll take a look next week.
Okay. Bug in a specific PR. IPVS mode will not work with specific Linux and kube proxy.
Didn't we have this one last week? I mean, last time?
Yes, it's another one of Andrew's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I should look at that part first. Pod created before container network ready.
Calico, assign Casey. Can't we have the CI robot do that automatically?
Casey, don't you have any minions you can throw this stuff at?
I could definitely script something that does that.
I was just thinking it's about time I start shedding some of this to my minions.
Okay, almost all the way through. We have unable to connect to HTTP service after Kubernetes upgrade to 1.13.
How far back do we care about releases, by the way? What's the official policy?
Official, it's 3, but we had talked about making it 4, right?
Okay. So 1.13 and maybe even 1.12 is still valid, given that 1.16 is latest.
Well, I think 1.13 is the furthest back that we're patching right now. I would informally consider the line to be drawn there.
Exactly.
Okay.
It would be 16, 15, 14, 13.
I thought 13 fell off when 16 goes. I thought it was current -2.
It was current -2, but there was some discussion about making it current -3. I thought we had actually converged on that, but maybe I'm misremembering.
Yeah, I might be behind.
Yeah, I think it's still current -2 because 1.12 wasn't patched with all those CVEs yesterday, which would mean that 1.15. What's that?
Okay, so 12 fell off as soon as 1.16.0 was cut.
Okay, so given that
But it should have been patched yesterday, and it didn't get patched yesterday, which means it's current -2, doesn't it?
It was cut before.
Or the bug didn't exist before that.
Maybe.
We can take this to a separate.
Yeah.
So this looks like it's a network plugin bug, probably.
Yeah, that would be my best guess.
Did they say what network they're using?
There's Rancher. I think Rancher is flannel by default, right?
I'm not sure.
I think it is.
They probably bundle something.
Is anybody Rancher-ish here?
Anyone want to just volunteer?
Just to do triage, not to tackle a bug, just to make sure that we have enough information to pursue it. Somebody? Somebody?
Send it my way. I can at least ask another question. We said we were going to do 15 minutes today.
Yeah, we've only got 2 more,
now,
so
we
we
do
can
have 2
just
more.
leave them. Or
we can
do you want to leave them? Do you want to continue?
We've got quite a few items on the agenda, so let's leave them.
I think we should leave them.
Yeah, easy enough to come back to next time.
Thank you, Valerie. Many weeks ago, Tim, you said we would do a review of all outstanding KEPs in the meeting.
Yeah.
And that meeting has come.
So I did some prep for this morning. I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 open KEPs that are either committed or in pull request form. I thought it was worthwhile to run through them. Maybe can I share my screen? Oh, I'm not on Zoom, never mind. I'll run through them. I'll read off the descriptions and we can sort of touch base on them. So there's graduate IPv6 to beta. I was previously blocked on CI. I guess Kind is now CI able to do this, but I don't have any context on the status of it. Do you here have more context?
Hey.
Go ahead, Antonio.
Well, Kind is running in pre-submits jobs, but we are missing to run it in one cloud provider. I was thinking in Azure, but I don't know. I think that Aramas is created a job to test dual stack. I was trying to look to this AKS deployment tool, but
So I don't
I
think
don't
we have any merge blocking CI that depends on other clouds at the moment, but I could be wrong. We could do it as a post-submit test on another provider. That seems fair, but I don't know if we have a precedent for that. Anybody who's also involved in SIG testing here? No?
I think, yeah, I think just from release leading stuff, to be in release blocking and go to beta, it needs to run on more than one provider, is the criteria.
Yeah.
Didn't we used to have pre-submit AWS not super long ago?
I asked it today too for AWS. Sorry, it's too late for me. I mean, for Amazon and I asked it for COPS, but since that COPS is not running against master again, so
Ping us, Antonio. We'll see if we can get it running on Azure, and then you can therefore go to beta in 1.17.
I'm sorry. Okay, so I can, if I have time, I can try to reach out to Cal and to Aramas to see if we can have it work.
Okay. This is IPv6 only. Not
This was the IPv6 straight support.
Right, single family.
Right. The next cap was endpoint slice API at 8 went alpha in 1.16. I don't know if there's been any significant bugs or anything in the day since it was launched. But I assume the intention is to try beta in 1.17?
Yeah, I mean, it seems reasonably good at scale testing, and the result of that is some quick proxy improvements. But with that, it seems like it's handling many thousands of endpoints fine.
Great.
Yeah.
So one thing that I mentioned somewhere was we should think about for beta whether we want to keep this as a built-in or whether we actually want to move it to a CRD. We've kind of held the bar for other topics, and I think I just dropped the ball in not asking why are we not defining this as a CRD. So I think it's something we should consider, just for sort of intellectual honesty.
Mostly because of the proto.
That may be a reason not to do it, but I don't think we've talked about it.
Okay.
Right? So it may be worthwhile to have an update to the cap about why this is worthwhile as a built-in versus a CRD. And in fact, the proto motion may be. Next was service LB finalizer. Status? What's the status on this one?
It's being promoted to beta in 1.16.
Okay.
And we haven't planned. We haven't planned for GA yet.
Okay.
For the next 5 weeks, so I don't have much update on it at the moment.
So the intention is not to try to GA in 1.17?
Not too urgent at the moment.
Okay. Because further down our agenda is a touch on the timeline for 1.17. And it's Q4, so it's a very short timeline. So basically, if you don't have a plan to move it in 1.17, you don't have a shot.
Zihong, I would ask, what would prevent us from GA? Because, like, what is required even? Since it's enabled in beta.
Right, it's enabled by default in beta. I don't actually have much thought at the moment. It's more thinking time. If there's anything wrong.
Think about it.
Yeah, let me think about it.
Okay. Something else that I threw there that I wanted to talk about when we get to the timeline part was we sort of idly discussed this idea of making 1.17 a primarily stability release, which would mean like maybe we don't actually advance any APIs in 1.17. I see everybody going, oh, my poor API. But, you know, like there's some value in holding the line too, right? So let's discuss that when we get there. The next one was graduate ingress to GA.
Yeah, well, that's also another topic on the agenda, so maybe we just save it for that.
Save it for that one, that's fine. Next was topology-aware service routing. This just missed the cut for 116. I know that there's an update in my mailbox, and I have to circle back and look at it. And hopefully, if we're doing changes for 117, this will make it in 117 as alpha. And also, I think actually, with all the other kube-proxy bits that landed, we probably should have a n-way conversation about the intersection of topology, endpoint slice, dual stack, and there was one more that I can't remember. There were like 4 big things that landed in kube-proxy, and they all had to rebase on top of each other. And this one just missed the boat. So you get the funnest of all fun rebases.
And there's other cleanup, like the redundancy between the IP tables rules that kubeproxy and kubelet both do.
Yeah, there was a few smaller things, but I feel like there was one more big one that landed that like was just touching all the same lines of code.
I'm agreeing with you. Okay.
Okay.
I'm just adding to it.
Gotcha. Yes, there were a lot. There were 4 like 747s that I was trying to land all at the same time. So the next one was V4 V6 dual stack. Kyle, you want to give a quick update?
Phase 1 and 2 are done. Phase 3 is being talked about. We have a clear idea about what we want to do, but it's still not locked down yet. I was waiting for Lucky to finish up with the release, and we can talk and come back with a sort of a proposal for phase 3.
And what do we think the gate for beta is? Is it finishing phase 3, or are we willing to beta with phase 1 and 2?
We have to have a couple of CNIs before we go to beta. That was the key, if I remember correctly, in the CAP. That was the key move to beta.
Okay.
The reason behind that is
and we're going to need to land it in kind too, so we have the 2 platform thing. Otherwise, it can't go to beta. Unless it can run on AWS or some other cloud, I don't know.
Right.
But kind is blocked because containerd is not supported. This is a patch that is going to be merged, but it's in the new containerd version. So what are the runtimes that are going to support for beta 12 stack?
Runtime.
Yeah, the CRIO, containerd, Docker shim, all these things.
So Docker shim, CRIO. CRIO is missing a bug. I can look it up. Somebody took care of it. There were somebody early on took care of the bug in CRIO. The bug was on the reporting of the IPs.
Okay.
All right.
Next CAP was node local DNS cache. I don't know. I just loaded up all the CAPs that I'm sure weren't GA yet.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. So the beta, it is beta in 115. So
115.
Yeah.
Still beta in 16.
Yes.
Okay.
And
we have a
don't
GA plan?
have a plan for 117. I was thinking 118, only because we don't have a plan yet. And
okay.
Like you said, it's a short quarter. But
it's probably worth, like, do we have any action items? Like, or are we just letting it soak? Right.
We are just letting it soak for now. There have been questions that came up about looking for it, which in the data set we did say the options, and we're working on the serial support option for it.
Okay.
So yeah.
So it's beta, but it's not deployed by default, is it?
It is not.
Because that's up to the deployment.
Right.
So are there any deployment tools actually deploying right now? Like,
support for it, but none of it is by default. That's what you're asking.
no, I wasn't necessarily asking if by default. There's support for it.
Kubernetes supports it and GKE supports it now.
Yes.
And I don't know about other
GKE and COPS, I think there was a NetApp there. I don't know. Yes, there was that.
Okay. So we want to put it up for the.
It is there in Kubernetes. You can, yeah, as part of the 50.
So it's probably worthwhile to get a KEP update. It just covers the what do we want to do between now and calling it GA. Whether that means turning it on by default or not, it's probably okay for it not to be a default in some of these tools, even to be GA, but just to say to people who are using it, like, we have full confidence in this thing and it works.
Okay, yeah, let me get something out there.
SCTP support. Do you have a status on that? I lost track of it.
So I think the people who started the KEP sort of abandoned it once the initial code was in because that was good enough. But I was planning there. I sent that email a while back. So I think basically we need some CI and a little bit of documentation, and then it should be ready to move ahead. So I'm slowly working on that.
Cool. You should probably send a KEP update and put your name in there as a co-author or something.
Okay.
Next, we're into now PRs that haven't been merged. So there was a KEP for AutoPath.
Yeah, we haven't closed on all the.
Yeah, I just lost track of it. Haven't had the time to. There's only 2 or 3 more. HTTP TLS for health checking. There's an open change against the ingress. That's, I guess, the ingress one. Let's talk about kubeproxy component config, which has been languishing. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's something I would like to get to this release, but there's a couple things in the more immediate future I have to deal with.
Okay. And the last one was egress source IP, which I honestly have not read yet. Casey, you got some comments in there. Can you speak to it? And Dan and Valerie. Oh, everybody but me.
Yeah, I did have some comments, didn't I? I looked at it a while back and I hadn't seen any progress on it since. I suspect it's waiting on, I think the author responded to our comments and we probably haven't responded back to him.
Okay. All right, we should try to circle back on that one.
Yeah.
And that's all the KEPs that I could find that were tagged sig-network that I was sure were not already GA'd or not merged yet. So not actually too bad. Most of them are in flight substantially. Really, we're not doing enough work. Bless whoever was taking notes.
Or chatting.
I think there were a few of us combining forces. Do you want to talk about the 117 as a stability release now?
So we sort of half seriously floated this idea around about focusing 117 efforts on stability, where stability was sort of undefined, but the rough cut was no features, no API progressions, only bug fixes, things that are directly tied to kind bug issues, and test improvements and scalability and those sorts of things. The concern with this, of course, is that people will just ignore us and do their own thing until next quarter, and then they'll just double ball us. And also that, you know, there's a lot of nebulous issues that are open that don't have a lot of concrete, actionable stuff. So it's hard for the broader community to get engaged. And also, there's a lot of in-flight work that we'd love to see come to a head, right? So maybe we could even loosen the definition and say, like, progressing APIs towards GA is okay, but no new APIs. That would punish the topology stuff in particular, which I really want. But, you know, in the sake of principle, I'm willing to.
When you say we, it's who, like
everybody who's like it would be incumbent on everybody here who's reviewing PRs.
Right, no, but I'm saying sig-network or
who discussed this?
Yes.
I discussed it with SIG Release and a few other folks. It seems very difficult to try to rally the entire project on it, and I haven't had the time to like go to every. My intention was to go to every SIG meeting for a 2-week span and try to make this pitch, and I haven't been able to do that.
Because I think if we want it to work really, like each SIG probably has to like set some targets around bug fixes. Otherwise, like people won't, like you're saying, ignore it. And people might ignore it and not do. Like you want to like put an aggressive like we're gonna get this many bugs cranked out this cycle.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Yes.
To focus people on that instead of features.
Right. I would really. I mean, like I looked at the backlog of issues this morning. Like we have a lot of issues that are not huge issues, but they're also not on fire, and so a lot of people ignore them, myself included. Like I'm not. What do you guys think? I'm doing all the talking.
I mean, it looks like we've got about 80 bugs open labeled sig-network. Maybe we could just set a explicit goal as a SIG to focus on that as kind of one of the headline features. Doesn't necessarily have to mean stopping other efforts, but just adding one.
I don't know. I think that we have to look at the priority. Like if they're actually not particularly contributing to stability problems, I don't. It might do more harm than good. Like I don't know. Like if they're like minor things that are, I don't know.
There's a lot that are like cloud provider-y too, right? Like I know there's bugs in the Amazon integrations and the GCP integrations and the Azure integrations. But I think those are fair game. You know, I don't expect anybody outside of Google to work on the GCP integrations. Right?
I have a comment. So the bugs are fair game, obviously, as a first priority. The second priority is the number of to-dos and cleanups in the code.
Sure.
That are not tracked as bugs.
That's a good point. Although, one of the things we could do here is go file the bugs against these to-dos.
Yes, I think we should.
There's a lot of to-dos in there that when people send me a PR to do them, I sort of argue, yeah, maybe we shouldn't do this.
Something also to think about, if we're talking about a stability release or fixing bugs, don't underestimate the amount of work that adding test cases and CI tests for those bugs would have, and we should probably have a good bar for that.
Yes.
It feels like this, as part of the investigation, we should put together a bug list and then have the best would be to assign owners to get it done or to get the reviews done.
So the only way this is really going to happen is if somebody steps up to be the bug master on this. Somebody who's not Valerie. So can I get somebody to be a volunteer to go look at those 80 bugs and try to sort them maybe into like t-shirt size categories?
Yeah, I can take a swag. This is Bowie calling in from Hawaii. I can put together the initial 80. Then we can figure out what. What's that?
I said you got nothing else to do on vacation, so you're gonna go.
I have to go to a wedding. I can do the initial swag, and then I'll send it out to the SIG list to kind of triage, and because it will probably be all over the place in terms of expertise, so we'll need everyone's help.
I mean, that would be great if we could take the 80 and like filter out the 20 most important ones. Then at least we can have a more rational conversation here. Where we put a bounty on them, or I'll trade code review time for bug fixes or something. Right?
Cool.
All right, thanks, Bowie.
Thanks, Bowie. Next on the agenda was, doesn't have a name next to it, but Debian Buster and NF tables bug.
Is that you, Dan Winship?
I am not the one who added that, no.
All right, well, we can talk about it. For anybody who wasn't following along, Debian Buster is busted on Kubernetes by default because the new IP tables 1.8.x uses NF tables under the covers but the IP tables built into the kubeproxy container uses the old IP tables interface, and the kernel does not want you mixing those. And there's no really good way to detect between them, although Dan posted a pactacular script that seems to do the job. That was a compliment. Is that a fair summary, Dan?
Yeah, I think so.
And
so, I mean,
also,
part of there are two problems. You know, one is that there's also a bug in IP tables 182, which Debian Buster is shipping. So, but then there's also the mix and match problem. And the mix and match problem is especially a problem because we are building all of the official packages on Debian. I think it's SID, whatever the one before Buster is. And that only has IP tables 1.6. So there's no way we can make it support the NF table stuff. And so that sort of complicates possible solutions.
So I have a branch that it enables a Debian base image on Buster. And there's some deep apt foo happening there that I don't quite understand. So we need to get somebody who understands that to help make sure that I didn't screw it up. But I was able to successfully build a Debian base on Buster and then an IP tables on top of that on Buster. What I didn't do yet was start to patch in the script that you wrote, like basically go in and ex post facto replace all the IP tables binaries with a script that runs your heuristic and then decides which other IP tables version to run. I could shoot a hand on this if somebody's got free time. I would be happy to point to this.
Okay, you already pointed to that on the bug, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I can look at that. And then I'm still going to try and figure out the best way to conveniently package the wrapper script so that everyone else who needs to use it can use it as well.
Yeah, I mean, ideally that would be great if the IP tables package upstream adopted something.
We're trying to push them in that direction.
Awesome. Absent that, we can do this for ourselves. It doesn't fix the 182 problem. And I don't have any context of who the maintainers are for the Debian packages, but maybe we could pressure them to release 183.
Yeah, I don't know either, but we probably know people who know them, so.
I thought they maybe had released one of 183.
Well, Upstream has, but have they released it into Debian yet?
Yeah, exactly. Debian must.
Yeah,
I think Upstream must have forgotten to announce it or something because Fedora is still shipping 182 as well.
That's just because Phil was concentrating on other things like the performance work. When I talked to him last week, I told him to go update Fedora to the latest as well.
Okay.
So as part of this, Dan, maybe you can find out who the Debian maintainer is and give them a poke.
Okay.
That would be awesome. I'm just super swamped right now, but this is a very high impact thing. I admit that I did not fully appreciate the magnitude of it until I started to really dig into it.
Yeah. Okay. Next up, we've got Ingress v1 API working group.
Yeah, so Chris, I see you're on the call as well. So Chris and I were talking, we were basically Ingress v1, GA. We want to kind of get a good cadence going, and we were thinking that we would start up just a meeting, I don't know if it qualifies for working group, basically every week with interested Ingress v1 implementers and try to sort of wrap up the CAP and then get all the implementations aligned. I'll send out an email with more details, but basically this will just be a meeting, kind of half an hour to sync up if people are interested.
Cool.
Sorry, just to follow up on one issue on Ingress v1, Chris, I know there's the topic around the error message around the renamed field, and unfortunately, I don't have a good update for you, except that I spoke with API Machinery folks who said, yeah, actually, the validation should be running on the version types, and if somebody wants to go dig into the API machinery, I have some starting points. It's probably not a short-term project, but it would be good to build confidence. So if anybody here feels like cross-pollinating with API machinery, let me know, and I will happily point the way.
Would you say that's like a blocker, like having that done before?
I don't think it's a blocker. I think we can just do something dirty like update the strings so that it says both names or something, and leave it to do and come back to it. I'm trying to motivate the API machinery team to do this themselves, but I did start to peel back the layers of the onion, and it's pretty smelly.
Okay.
It sounds kind of interesting to me.
It's an interesting problem. I wish I had more hours to work on it. It sounds like a lot of fun, but it's deep. It's like this information is lost deep in the stack.
Yep. We might be able to get Jordan to help as well if it does become something that we think would be a blocker, because he pinged me earlier this week saying that he can help out with any struggles we're having API-wise to get Ingress out the door.
Sorry, who did you say?
Jordan.
Oh,
Jordan,
okay.
Jordan Liggett.
Ah, sucker.
I have a basic stupid question here. So we're talking about advancing from V1 Beta 1 to V1, but making big changes. Why is it not going to V1 Beta 2?
I've asked that question too.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that was brought up. It is something that's perfectly within reason. So that's another thing that we would probably have to decide on very soon.
I think it's a very fair question.
Yeah, I mean, stability-wise, it makes sense, but is there going to be a big difference? Like, are people going to use the beta versus the V1?
Well,
I think kind of the question.
Go on.
I think kind of the question is it's harder to potentially change the V1 if we decide that something isn't optimal or just needs tweaking. And because we're changing a lot of things, I think that's more likely.
Right. I mean, a little more broadly, I would say that, you go from beta to the real thing when you're very confident based on the beta. We're not liking V1 Beta 1, so we should be going to another beta or an alpha. We shouldn't be going to V1 yet.
Yeah, I admit that the list of things to change along the way grew more than I expected it to.
I think that was a pretty natural evolution.
Yes, it's natural, but it's not trivial. So I think it's not justified to go from, make the amount of changes we're talking about in the step from beta 1 to V1. It needs to be going to an alpha or a beta.
Will you show up as a working group and argue that, Mike?
That's an invitation.
Fine,
No,
I'll show up and argue that.
I mean, it is very valid. The other way to go would be to radically cut some of the stuff in the list, which is another option.
Yep.
There's no reason to do that. I mean, if we've learned stuff, let's use it. Let's just do it right.
Well, anything that we can do additively without being super impactful, like maybe we can postpone that to after the V1. Like we did a pass of that sort of analysis before, but maybe we can be more aggressive.
Yeah, that's generally, we have, sorry.
All right, go ahead, Bobby.
Yeah, like we already, I think, removed some of the stuff, and then I think more could be removed.
I thought our goal was to get to V1 and put it to bed and work on the V2. I mean,
that's also funny you say that, because that topic is right.
Yeah, that's what I thought we did. And like minimal change to the V1.
All right, so there'll be a working group. Will you send an email out about when the working group is meeting?
Yes.
All right.
Cool. On that point, we should move to V2.
V3.
V3, V n plus 1. So we don't have much time, but basically we sketched a possible approach at KubeCon earlier this year. And basically this is sort of like an API sketch / proposal. You'll note that many of the ideas are not like new stuff. Basically our goal was to kind of combine some of the best thoughts on various proposals that have been floating around. And the biggest thing to note is like, this is this is kind of like a first stab. Like we really need community like feedback, and then everyone help out to sort of make the API make sense and kind of be a long-term API for load balancing in L7, which was kind of the idea of why we would want to accelerate V1, reduce its scope drastically, and then just throw all our efforts into V2. So please take a look. I sent out the link on the sig-network mailing list. Of course, comment on the doc or email or Slack. We would probably schedule more time as the comments come in for like a deeper dive, but probably we don't have time in this session.
So are we talking one working group or two?
So I think the working group will initially start out with V1 just to figure out what to do there in terms of scope. And then probably the same interested people will end up rolling into the V2. But initially, I just wanted to get the V1s, because the KEP for the V1's already out, and we already made some progress there, is to just wrap up and figure out like what specifically we're going to do there. But the kind of people interested will be basically the same, I would expect.
And I feel like I need to point out, we call it V2, but that's more tongue-in-cheek, because it's not intended to be a round trip to V1 sort of API. It's a new API with new resources and probably a new API group where that has to be decided. And it's significantly different. So it's sort of a long-term replacement for Ingress, but not convertible from.
Well, if we're following, for example, the way they do it in Go, that's normal for V2 versus V1.
I guess that's true. The Kubernetes APIs declare this round trip semantic. So V2 is supposed to round trip to V1.
Have we ever actually got it to V2 on anything?
There's a couple of APIs that are doing V2 beta stuff right now, like auto-scaling.
But we round trip from beta to V1.
Yeah. All live types are expected to round trip within a single API group and kind.
Just one.
So,
yeah, I recall that statement.
Chain, but not.
I have a question around that, where the ingress resource is actually not even present in the V2 proposal, the current proposal we are talking about. So is it technically correct to call it a V2?
No,
it's not a V2. It's like that's how we refer to it, because there's just no good names.
Right. It's not really Ingress V2, it's gateway and routes.
Okay, and given that there won't be a V2 of the ingress resource itself ever, right? Like, so that's why we would like to pack everything into a V1 beta 2 and then move to V1 or something like that.
Right. We'd like Ingress V1 to be good enough so that we don't have to spend any more time or attention on Ingress, and we can focus our energy on the proper evolution. And what I like about this new proposal is it's a much broader vision for load balancing. So comes with commensurate complexity. So people, please go look at it, think about it. It's missing a lot of stuff. Like, it's the skeleton of the proposal, but there's a lot of the flesh that isn't there yet.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Okay. The next thing I wanted to talk about quickly was we've gotten a couple requests about the SIG meet and greet at KubeCon. I don't know if anybody has actually said they're able to do that yet. I know, Valerie, you said you might be able to.
Yeah, I'll probably be table hopping.
Sorry.
I filled out some form, so
oh, okay.
I guess Bowie.
Cool. I wasn't sure if that form was filled out. I wanted to make sure we didn't lose track of it. But it sounds like you did it.
When was the meet and greet again?
I think it's the 18th.
Okay, so Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's towards the end of the contributor summit, I think.
Okay.
The next one was also for me. We don't have to talk much about this. The main thing I want to do is just point out that the tentative schedule for 117 is being figured out. It's a slightly shorter cycle than all the others, as usual towards the end of the year. So you can check out the schedule there. I think we already talked a little bit about what we might want to do in that time frame above. So the last item was also from Tim for KubeCon.
Yes, so we got a SIG network intro / deep dive accepted. We signed up, Valerie and myself, but I wanted to, A, touch base with Valerie, since it's the only time I get to talk to you. What, are you still cool with that? And B, are there other people who'd like to participate in this?
I'm still cool with that, but as someone who is only tinkering in the SIG, I don't necessarily want to take up too much space if other folks are really interested in doing that.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody else wants to present or co-present the intro, that's an option. And if somebody wants to help steer the deep dive, that's an option. Like, I would be happy to step away from it if somebody else wanted to drive it entirely. You don't have to decide here. Think about it. If you're going to be in San Diego anyway, it's a low impact way of getting some fun stage time and talking to people. The slides that produce for the SIG meeting are probably a lot less glossy than the slides you produce for a normal session. I'm totally willing to help with slides and presentation at all, you know, whatever people need. If you are anxious about presenting, I'm also happy to help coach people through and get them ready. At Barcelona, we had what, 500, 600 people in the room?
Yeah, it was a packed room.
Yeah. So, but not.
So for the last day, wasn't it?
Sorry? Yeah,
it was the very last session.
Yeah.
So much.
So,
This is going to be.
But it won't be a 10,000 person room, so no need to get super nervous. Unless you're Cal, in which case you do.
So what time is it at this year?
Great question. I don't actually know.
Let me see. I'll look that up really quick.
It's Thursday morning. It's like 10 to noon or something.
I can sign myself up for that one.
All right. Maybe we'll touch base as we get into the beginning of October. Do some planning.
Sounds good.
Okay, that was the last item, unless there are any other last minute topics.
I have a question.
Please.
Yeah, so the V2 sketch that is out there, are there any timelines associated with it? Like how fast we want to move it?
It's done. It's been implemented already. No, I'm kidding. Bowie, are you still here? I don't know. I don't think we thought at all about timelines. I don't want to dilly-dally any longer. The issues in there have been festering for quite a long time, so I'd rather not still be talking about it a year from now.
Yeah, so it's basically as fast as we can reasonably get feedback on. Like, we would like to move fast, but you know, it's going to take a while to kind of get everyone together and get all the feedback in.
And we're
but
going
we definitely will be actively like trying to advance it.
And we'll need the implementers to participate too, right? Like it can't actually go anywhere unless there are viable implementation.
Okay, that answers the question. Thank you.
And if you help out, it'll go faster.
For sure, going to be there. So, thank you.
Okay. Sounds like that might be it.
Actually, I have one last thing if we have like 2 minutes to spare.
We have 3 minutes to spare.
So I was going to put an initial proposal out. How opposed would folks be about the idea of trying to make a restrictive network policy a default implementation?
Do you mean building an implementation of network policy into the release bundle, or do you mean making the default be restrictive if you have network policy?
Start out with default be restrictive, but look at bundling or requiring a compatible controller in the longer term.
I'm very anxious about bundling because there's so many varying CNIs that may or may not work with any particular bundle. Requiring an implementation to be conformant or something is a can of worms, but if only there was somebody in the room who knew about the conformance stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I doubt that that's gonna be something we can bring. If you want to bring that up with the conformance group, we can. But like, I think that that's right now. The question is whether that's gonna enough providers are able to support that in their environments that we're not gonna.
Yeah, the multi-tenancy working group was looking at some similar things, and they also hit the conformance issue.
Yeah, although this one in particular, I think most of the major providers have implementations for, so I wouldn't say it's out of the question to advance it towards conformance, but I don't know if we have any precedent for something that is required by conformance but not.
Yeah, all right, just curious about people's initial thoughts on that.
What other thought?
Something like Pad Autoscaler, which requires running metric server or something like metric server. We want to make that conformant, but not because of it. It requires something optional. But I mean, it's just about, yeah, it's about can we agree on the API surface as a group and be sure that we provide an implementation.
Valerie, do you have a motivating factor here?
Broadly with SIG usability, we're looking at some of the defaults that are basically unfriendly and trying to see if it would be possible to nudge them in like a more turnkey situation. Like default closed versus default open network makes a lot more sense. If you want to open it all up, then you plonk in the big, I know what I'm doing config, that kind of thing.
Interesting.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I do have a concern. This is an API change, right, in some sense.
Yeah.
And in a particularly difficult sense because it's something that's not actually declared in a versioned API anywhere.
Yeah, and
this is a pre-cap idea, definitely.
I'd also say taking feedback from some of the service mesh work that I've seen out there, Istio was lambasted for taking an off by default policy and nobody could figure out how to make it work until they changed their default. Interesting topic. We're going to pick out. Thanks, everyone.
Cool. See you all in 2 weeks.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Go comment on the doc.